Welcome to Modern Anarchy, the podcast featuring real conversations with conscious objectors to the status quo. I'm your host, Nicole.
I tried to keep her quiet, but she's screaming inside of me. I tried to keep her hiding, oh, shut up. I tried to keep her quiet, but she's a wild, wild woman.
On today's episode, Rayna shares her story with being raised in the Mormon Church and how she was able to escape and regain her sense of self. Together, we talk about Mormon culture, dissociation from our past religious identities, and how hard it can be to change your ideological perspective. This is a beautiful episode with such an amazing person that is so vulnerable about the struggle that is leaving religion. I know a lot of listeners have reached out about how the spiritual trauma episode with Fundy Friday resonated with them in so many ways, and so I really wanted to touch on this topic again. And so we have a very personal narrative about what it looks like to leave the church and finding your own liberation. So I just want to say thank you, Rayna, for sharing your story. There is so much strength in your vulnerability here, and I know that so many people are going to resonate with what you say today. So tune in.
It's a lot.
I know, which I'm excited for.
It's a lot of who Rayna is.
Which I think makes sense, like given how formative religion is. Yeah, I know.
just got really intimidated. I mean, because I was born into the church, so I didn't know there was another way to be.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't know there was another option. And I just remember looking at, like, other kids and thinking, like, wow, they get to live so freely, but, like, I couldn't fathom, like, being able to just live a normal life without restrictions, without feeling guilty, or, like, somehow I was, like, doing something wrong. So I think a huge, like, foundation of who I am now came from my lens of the world, like, at the time.
Yeah.
So I've had to overcome, like, a lot of guilt. Can we back up? I feel like I'm, like...
back up whenever you want, yeah. I know you have notes. I'm also here to, like,
Yes.
guide you and do this whole thing
Thank
with
you.
you. So, like, you don't have to look at the notes anymore.
Okay.
Like, if you just, like, let go. So, yeah, Mormonism.
Yes.
I think the first place to start is maybe just, like, how did you get into it? Were you raised up in it as a kid?
Yeah. So I was born into it. My dad was also born into it. My mom actually converted to marry him. So she had a very different background. And I think the combination of my dad's family expectations and then my mom really wanting to try to form, like, a wholesome family environment really combined to result in, like, a very religious upbringing. Yeah, I was born into it, as were all of my siblings, and a lot of my peers. A lot of my peers went to the church as well. Were members of the church, sorry.
Did you go to, like, Mormon school? Is there Mormon, or how?
There isn't an actual, like, Mormon school. Not the way that, like, you have Catholic schools,
right.
But once you get to high school, for an hour before every school day at, like, 6 a.m, you go to seminary. So you get an hour of, like, church teaching before school for 4 years.
Wow.
There's also church on Sunday, usually, like, weekday activities, like youth group or something on Tuesday nights.
Wow.
And every so often on weekends, too. So,
like, all the time.
yeah, very immersed. Like, as immersed as they could possibly get you. It was a lot.
Yeah. And, I mean, you believed it?
Oh, very much. That was reality. Really, I don't even remember there being a point where I thought, like, oh, I get to choose this. It's like, no, this is just what life is. And then any alternative just seemed very scary. They really painted a picture outside of the church of, like, you know, you don't have God in your life, you don't have direction, like, we have the answers, we're the safe place. So that was very much like what the environment was like growing up. They really drill it into you. They talk a lot about how they are the one true church and how you're so lucky and blessed and, like, chosen to be in this organization. So that's one thing that always, like, really stood out to me as a kid, just feeling like, oh, wow, like, thank goodness I'm safe, you know?
Yeah. Which then makes it very scary to leave.
Yes. It just, outside of the church, felt like a huge mystery. Like a very alluring one, because it really to be honest, looked like everyone was having fun.
Mm-hmm.
Like, more fun than I was having. But it just seemed like, oh, well, that just comes at a price. You know? Like, there's going to be consequences for, like, straying.
Right. Could you say more about what your religious beliefs looked like? A lot of people might not know much about what Mormonism is.
True. Yeah. Mormonism actually is Christianity. It's a pretty strict version. I think I would say stricter than your average, like, non-denominational Christian or something. I guess it qualifies as a fundamentalist Christian religion. It's a really central part of your life. It's, you know, prayers every night. I think I mentioned throughout the week, like, numerous activities, a lot of expectations. I remember just feeling very much like being a member of the church was expected to be the center of your life. There was even a lot of pressure, I remember, to go to BYU. For anyone not familiar, like Brigham Young University in Utah. Your face right now.
That's where my sister went.
Yeah, there was a lot of pressure to go there. I remember in high school, as like a senior, people at church asking me, oh, so you're going to BYU? Or are you going to BYU? That was the question versus like, where are you going to college?
Wow.
And then like, oh, like weird looks when I was like, oh, I'm going to Miami University of Ohio.
Like, goodbye. We'll
and
never
they're
see
like,
you again.
Their next question is, oh, well, is there a church there? Like, is there an institute there? Because institute is like the college version of Mormons. So it's like the college group. And I think there were like 6 of them at Miami University.
Wow.
So not a huge presence there.
No.
And I remember for boys, there's a lot of pressure to go on the 2-year mission trips. I mean, I knew people that actually like told their kids, yeah, we'll pay for your college if you go on a mission, or we'll buy you a car, like, if you go on a mission. So yeah, it's just always like the next step is, okay, well, a major church, you know, step for you.
And the women, my sister went on a mission, so some of the women do that too.
They do. It's not as pushed. It's really pushed for boys.
Why do you think it's so different?
I think it's because of sex. I think they're trying to keep them from having sex because they send boys when they're 19, like when they would leave for college. Yeah. And then it's 2 years. So I feel like that's the height of when boys would leave home and not be supervised. Right. So they're going to send them on a really intense mission trip to make sure that they turn into return missionary husband material.
And I think even talking about the mission trip, I mean, a lot of people might not have any idea what that even looks like because they don't allow you to contact your family other than letters. Right. On Christmas and like calls. Easter or something and your birthday. Yeah. But like beyond that, you cannot contact your family.
Not at all. It's completely immersive and you don't even know ahead of time where you're going. You get a letter from the church telling you where in the world you're going to go for 2 years.
Yeah, my sister did all of this. So I'm like, yes, I know.
It's crazy.
But it's crazy because I didn't know that before. Yeah. So like even hearing about this, like, oh, a mission, right? Like it's different. Like,
and a lot of people.
You don't have access to music. You don't have access to any sort of thing, any sort of internet access for that to... You come back to a whole different culture.
Yeah. Yeah. Like crazy. A different person too. So there was a lot of that. And then for girls, it was, oh, well, you know, the gold standard is to marry a return missionary. Oh, that's like, really? Oh, yeah. Every girl was like, oh, I want to, my perfect man. I'll go to BYU and he'll be a return missionary and then we'll have our 5 children. And that's mean. But I mean, it was kind of a stereotype for a reason because that was the standard that they really told everyone to strive for.
For sure. That's why the ring before spring saying comes about, right? Where they're like, oh, you start school in the fall and then before spring you already get a ring. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
I haven't heard that one. I heard going to get your MRS degree.
Oh yeah.
Like you go to college to meet a husband.
Yeah.
So
fascinating. So then if you're saying you chose to go to Miami University instead of BYU.
Yeah.
What was going on?
Because I knew at the time that I wanted to be an English major and I was looking at the English departments and I knew that they had like a good program and I liked that they were closer to home.
How dare you put your academics before your spirituality, Rayna?
I know. Shocking.
Did you get that pushback from anybody?
Not explicitly. Okay. I just got, it was more like the facial expressions or like the tone of voice, like, oh, Miami, what's there?
Like, not Jesus.
Apparently not. And I was in college when I actually ended up leaving the church too. So again, it makes sense why they would want you to go to a church that or a school that reinforces what you're learning at church.
Right, exactly. Well, because then your community is reflecting all the same values, then it's really hard to leave when everybody's doing the same thing that you know. That's why it's
social pressure.
Exactly. So then you go to Miami University still being Mormon.
Yeah, when I first started, and actually my first year I roomed with a girl who was Mormon.
Oh, wow.
We actually met, the church had ways of connecting students who would be attending the same schools so that they could meet up and whatnot. And so I ended up rooming with her. We didn't get along very well. It got even weirder once I stopped going to church. Once I quit getting up on Sundays and going with her when she left. I think she was very put off and disturbed by the fact that I was drifting from the church. And I think she was someone who seemed very involved with it. That was at least the sense that I got from her. So I think the idea of leaving was just super horrifying.
Well, tell me more though, because you don't just stop waking up for Sunday for no reason. What's going on at that time? What was stopping you from going on Sundays?
So I was a freshman. My dad was also very sick with cancer. So I was really struggling with some deep, life questions. Also, just over time, I think since I was a teenager, I'd really kind of been struggling with the church. I really did sincerely believe it and try my absolute hardest to follow the guidelines, live life the way I thought I was supposed to. I remember praying so hard, reading my scriptures, trying to go to the activities, and just not feeling that, euphoria they described when they say, oh, you feel the Spirit, it's true without a doubt. And I never was able to feel that God was actually listening, or that, people talked about being able to feel his presence and that warmth. And I just continually was waiting for that. And for a long time thinking something was wrong with me for not feeling that, rather than because the notion that maybe this teaching is wrong just didn't enter as a possibility. I had struggled with that for a long time and had really kind of been feeling my beliefs decline as time went on. Being able to leave for school, no longer be in my parents' house, and therefore have the choice to stop going to church. Once I realized after a while, hey, there's no one making me go now.
Yeah.
Which was scary and also kind of cool. And plus, to be honest, I was I'm tired on Sundays. I really would like to have a weekend.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to go. I didn't like it. And it felt very freeing, but also very terrifying.
Yeah, I was going to ask.
Because there was still that part of me that really thought, oh, well, if I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing, if I'm not going to church, going to the activities, is Heavenly Father going to be angry with me?
Yes.
Am I leaving the church behind?
Yes.
And I was starting to think that it wasn't true, but on the off chance that it was, I was I could be kind of damning myself right now for eternity.
Right.
So that seemed like a big decision to be making at 19 years old about my eternal soul.
Right.
So it was pretty heavy. It really weighed on me for a while. But once I started not going and realizing that lightning bolts weren't coming down to hit me, so to speak, and those doubts still kind of stayed on and off. And then finally, after my dad died, some things came out after he passed away that, not to make it a whole sob story, and the focus really is less on my family dynamics and more on leaving the church, but this really, they interconnected. So after my dad passed away, we ended up finding out that he had extramarital affairs. And he had also he had been on a panel of upper level people at church who made decisions about excommunicating people who made those same kinds of mistakes. And so the hypocrisy just hit me so hard. And also the realization, they teach that people who are called to these positions at church were chosen by God, and that these men are receiving modern day revelation straight from Heavenly Father.
Right.
That this is the person who's supposed to fill this position. And so the belief was you had to be spiritually worthy to hold one of these high up positions at church.
Yeah.
Had real divine communication been coming from God, my dad would not have been considered worthy in the church to hold that position. And so to me, I was like, well, this is clear proof. This is a clear flaw in the logic of how this church is supposed to work. That kind of was the nail in the coffin for me after years of really kind of struggling with some of the church doctrine.
Wow.
So it was a lot. It was a very heavy time to both lose a parent and then also undergo a massive spiritual transition.
And to redefine maybe your concept of your dad.
Yeah. Having to face the reality that, oh, your parents aren't perfect and they're flawed humans also.
That's a lot of change and trauma all at once.
Yeah. In like a couple years. Few years. It wasn't a super clean cut exit, however.
Right.
The church actually continued to contact me for years after leaving, including me looking out the window and seeing a car parked in front of my house, getting calls from the local bishop, even though I hadn't told anyone in the church that I had moved into an area. So somehow they still knew where I was moving.
This sounds like harassment.
It was. I asked them numerous times to stop coming to my door, calling, emailing, and it continued until I got a notarized letter sent to church headquarters in Utah officially asking to be removed from the roster, to not be a member anymore. That's what it took.
Seems a little predatory. I'm just like hearing it, right?
Yeah. Interestingly, at the time, I remember being frustrated and annoyed and angry, both at kind of the guilt and shame that I had grown up with and feeling like this was something that was kind of done to me. And then also that they wouldn't even leave me alone after I left. So I had a ton of anger that I was trying to put somewhere that I wasn't processing for a long time. Additionally, I realized how toxic of an organization I felt it was. And I still feel it is. I think I've gotten to a place now where I don't have that anger anymore. I think I've really processed a lot of it. But in a more clear, logical sense, I can still look at the situation and say, I think that, spiritual abuse is a real thing.
Yeah.
And I think that the Mormon Church is guilty of a lot of that, as well as a lot of other fundamental Christian churches. But
I agree with you wholeheartedly. Without a doubt in my mind. Could you say more of why you think that to be so?
I think because the level at which they indoctrinate you from such a young age, and the gaslighting that goes on, and the fact that, after having done therapy and actually reading Leaving the Fold, which you let me borrow, thank you.
Of course.
They really mold the way you think so that it fits the truth that they are telling you.
Yeah.
It's a little disturbing to look back on. And interestingly, when I remember this, like even as I'm talking about this to you, it feels like a different life. I mean, it's foggy when I look back on it.
Like almost like you're disconnected from that sense of self.
Yeah. It almost feels like, well, that wasn't really actually me. Because it's certainly not the me that I feel I am now.
For sure. I resonate with you in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I know you have. You also can relate a lot.
And I'm sure a lot of people who have left such fundamental religions can understand that level of like dissociation from our previous self.
It's very strange.
Yeah.
And it's really only been the last few years that I've actually kind of recognized, oh, this was, arguably a cult.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, like the control that they exert over your life, and then how difficult it is to get out of it and to leave it behind, it's pretty intense.
To something that you didn't get a choice.
No. Yeah, I was just born into this reality.
Right.
And there's part of me that really resents that because I'm just now getting to be more of an assertive person, someone who's speaking up for my needs, and someone who is actually validating their emotions.
It's really hard.
You grow up being taught that your feelings and your emotions and perceptions as a human are inherently sinful, and that the only reason you are worthy is because, like, God is being merciful. So when you grow up internalizing that you need outside intervention to achieve who you're supposed to be,
or to literally do anything at all.
Yeah.
Because for more context, for anyone who hasn't been raised in like a fundamental context, there's this sense of like, I want to take away the self and the desires of the self because those are not God. And so today I remember going back through my own journal and like reading my own words, which is weird. And you dissociate to read that and me saying, God, please take away my desires and let you move through me today.
Yeah.
So then every day you go through the world being like, oh, like, do I want this? Well, wait. I need to let go because God's going to speak to me. And you're continually shutting out yourself so that when you do come out of religion trying to ask, like, oh, what do I want? For the last whatever many years you've been in it, you've stopped.
Yeah. One thing, it's interesting that you bring that up because one pattern I noticed with myself in relationships, like romantic relationships or even friend relationships after leaving the church, was that I struggled to even define what my own interests were.
Oh, yeah.
And so I would mold myself to whoever I was spending time with at the time because I honestly and truly did not know really what I as a person wanted. And so it's really only been the last 5 years of my life that I've really been working on defining who I am. Hello?
Hi, did you remove light?
Yes, I did. Is the pizza here? Okay, thank you.
Intermission.
That must be something I'll keep in there. Like, oh, the pizza's here. Oh, bitch, hold
That's
on.
so funny.
Well, the pizza was delicious.
I'm so glad.
It's like also casually my birthday, so we had to have pizza, which came at a great time.
Perfect timing.
But you were saying that this is also the first time that you started to really like understand your sense of self.
Yeah.
And I really resonate with that in so many ways because you're just told from so long to be a servant to God. Your life is to serve. So your whole life, your whole existence, your whole purpose is to bring other people to Christ or, whatever religion that is for you. And so, when you strip that away, you have almost no purpose in this world. Once you strip away all of faith, what's the point at all? Like, if God's not telling me these things, then why do I exist?
Right. If you're here to be his agent, basically.
Right, which is like frequently what you're taught.
That is one thing Mormonism has in common with a lot of Christianity is this drive for missionary work.
Yeah.
Like recruitment, not unlike MLMs.
What is that?
Multi-level marketing schemes.
Oh.
So
Mormons are just a multi-level marketing scheme. Maybe that will be the title.
Basically, it's true.
Well, tell me why you think that.
Because it really bases a lot on recruitment.
Yeah.
On getting more members. And you invest so much of your life in it that it's really hard to get out of it. And you end up paying more than you end up making in a way, not monetarily, but spiritually. Yeah, it kind of is like a big ol' MLM.
Yeah. What would you say is the biggest way that this experience shaped you? I know, I'm sure there's tons of ways, right? But like, maybe what is one of the most like difficult ones that you've been like struggling to let go of?
I think feeling upset and kind of upset at being robbed of a childhood / young adulthood without shame. I think shame was always such a big, presence in my life that is something I've really struggled that I resent. Things like being able to explore my sexuality without shame. Yeah, I came out as bisexual when I was 27, which I think is, not late for everyone, but it was later than, like, the curve. But, sex is so taboo. So my relationship with it was tough at first when I first started having sex. So just not feeling shame about my body, not feeling shame about pleasure and enjoying it. Like, those were all things that were big no-nos growing up.
Right. Masturbation is forbidden.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my gosh.
Even if you're married.
Yeah. Because it's sinful, apparently, to basically experience pleasure outside of the context of, the act of procreation, I guess.
Oh, interesting. So can you not have sex for pleasure?
You can, but they're very big on the fact that it's a beautiful thing meant to only be between a married couple.
Yeah.
So, pleasure without your partner is, I guess, like subversive.
Which is very restrictive.
Extremely.
I'm not sure all Christian, I guess they probably would. Yeah, all fundamentalists probably would fall into that same camp too.
Masturbation is not.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't
okay.
allowed for me either.
Yeah. Pornography, not
All of
okay.
it. Yeah, exactly.
Homosexuality, not okay.
Yeah. Do you feel like being in the church prevented you from understanding that aspect of yourself?
I don't think it prevented, but I think it delayed.
Yeah.
And I think it kind of stunted because I can look back now and recognize having crushes on girls when I was 13. But at the time, I actually I specifically remember one girl I was fascinated by at girls' camp, like church camp, ironically.
Oh, God.
Of course.
Yes.
And I just couldn't stop, like, looking at her all week. And I couldn't figure out why. And I was like, why am I, like, so fascinated by this girl? Because it didn't occur to me, oh, that's sexual attraction.
Right.
I can think women are attractive.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, in my head, it was so, well, no, like, you only like boys that way because I'm a girl. So that's just how it is.
Yeah.
And so bisexuality or any other kind of sexuality other than heterosexuality was not an option.
For sure. Which makes a ton of sense because your society didn't allow you to even have that thought, right? Right, because things like cognitive dissonance. Right. How could you hold the concept that you are a good person of faith and also even acknowledge any hint of the possibility that you might like something that is quote-unquote sinful within your structure? Mm-hmm. I mean, as someone who equally had that same experience where I had no idea.
It just didn't fit. So it wasn't an option.
Do you feel like you were fighting it? Just curious, because this is on mine. Because, like, I never felt like I was fighting anything.
I never felt like I was fighting it. I just didn't recognize it.
Exactly.
That's what it was.
That's what scares me. I'm like, how many people don't even know?
Yeah.
Because so deeply ingrained are these perspectives that they just don't even know.
Yeah. And then for a number of years, once I was distanced from the church a little more, for a long time I was in that place of like, oh, well, I think women are really attractive, but I'm not attracted to them sexually. And it's like, as time has gone on, I see you winking at me. No, like, bitch, you know you like girls. Like, stop it.
No, it's true. It's true. I think,
but it took a while to recognize it.
I think this is an important thing because someone else equally reached out to me recently and was like, "Hey, like, I think I might be gay, and I don't know."
Yeah,
and this is very like unstable feeling to like not really necessarily know. And I'm like, yeah, yes,
it is.
Welcome, hi, we're here.
We've been waiting for you.
Yes, exactly. So then I have to ask too, I mean, how did you know that you were not straight?
I think it was in college. But even then, in my head, it still seemed, oh my God, I can't believe how like problematic this is going to sound. But in my head at the time, it almost felt like, well, that's gone too far, Rayna. Like, just calm down. Like, I don't know. Does that make sense?
Say more. Yeah. What do you mean?
It just felt, I guess, scary to actually turn those thoughts and desires into like, oh, I could date women.
Yeah. No, yes.
That seemed terrifying.
Yeah, of course.
And it seemed like too much to almost try to take on.
Yeah.
And I just thought, well, it's just easier if I just, you know, stick to dating men because it's what everybody knows. It's what everyone expects of me at this point, just because I've only dated men so far. It's like, why rock the boat?
Yeah.
You know?
Which makes a lot of sense.
To backtrack a little, recognizing it was the first step.
Right.
Just because it was not presented as an option.
For sure. For sure. Yeah, and I mean, that's why I say this, because I've had this very similar journey where it's like, oh, am I gay? Maybe. I kind of feel it, but maybe. How do I really know? I've existed for all these other years feeling completely straight, but not acknowledging all the very similar to what you say of like getting into these like almost like mini obsessions, crushes, whatever we're going to call them, about people and not really knowing what to do with that energy. Like, why was I so nervous to be around beautiful women? And you're always like, oh, well, do I want to be them? And it's like, no, I think I just really liked them. But you think that you want to be them. And it's like, no, you just have a crush.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I don't know. At least from my side, like, I knew I was not straight when I first like had sex with a woman. Then I was like, oh, without a doubt, gay. Like, without a doubt, gay. Then now the question is, do I like men at all? I don't know.
It's just like, game changer.
It was that, like, whoa, okay, my body is reacting on a whole different level.
Revelation.
But, like, even as I start to date women, it's fascinating to think about, like, you meet women that want to have kids.
Yeah.
And, like, even in my ideology of my world, I've always been like, oh, I don't know if I want to have kids, but I've never truly, actually honestly thought about what would it look like to have a kid with another woman.
Mm-hmm.
Because then all the gender concepts of fears of like me being the like all of those things just kind of disappear and you're just like, whoa.
Yeah.
So like I think it makes a lot of sense that when we're going through these huge changes that it's very unstable and it's very unsettling because we're thinking of completely different possibilities than we've ever thought of before.
It introduces potential futures that you would have never considered accessible to you or potentially what you would end up doing.
Exactly. And the wild part is I didn't even feel that way until I met someone that I had feelings for that wanted those things. And now I'm here going like, oh my God, thinking about them. So it's not like exactly. Yeah. And it's like, so like even then it's like, God, so many ideas. And I think that like that is and will be the level of internalized homophobia of just like, you know, this is how you live your life. This is who you get married to. And like taking away those constructs and really redefining for yourself is not an easy process.
Yeah. It really peels back a lot of just assumptions and things that you didn't even know could be choices.
Yes.
Like, oh, wait, it's not static. Like, this isn't just how it is.
Right. And I think that particularly people who have left religion are in this like very fertile ground. Just are asking all of these questions, right? Because you believe in this huge meaning-making thing in your life, God, the purpose, your whole life. And when you strip that away and realize, oh, I need to redefine my whole value set, then asking things about your sexuality, like, God, I mean, I've already gone through the biggest meaning question ever. I mean, you can readdress this too. Like, it puts you into this flexible mode.
Yeah, that's true. It's like, I've handled, you know, I mean, since I was old enough to develop consciousness to really become self-aware. Yeah. I have also been living in this environment of you have to follow Jesus and get baptized and, you know, meet this whole checklist and
which same.
Yeah.
So like the fact that I got up and denounced homosexuality as sin in the front of my class and I was just like, this is the worst thing. Here's the quotes in the Bible. It's so hard to hold that level of who you were then and to know that you thought so much so that this was the truth. Like so much that you would have, you know, had been pushed to it, like gun to your head. We talked about even that thing of, you know, mental abuse that they did when we talked about with Fun Day Fridays. Like I would have said, yeah, I'm a Jesus follower. And so like to know that level of stern belief and then to let that go and be like, I was wrong. I was completely wrong about how I defined my life. At that point, now you encounter these other things. You're like, I was wrong about my sexuality too. I was wrong about these thoughts. I was wrong about that. And I think like that grace of learning to be like, wow, I was so stern and to go a 180 is huge.
Yeah. Also to like give yourself a break. There were so many expectations. Felt like you could never meet all of them. And I just felt burned out trying to be this perfect Mormon. Never feeling good enough because they literally teach in order to get into heaven, the highest level of heaven, if we really want to start.
Like, what?
Yeah. I mean, there's some like crazy details, but to simplify it down, there's basically 3 levels of heaven. If you're absolutely perfect and do everything the way you're supposed to and meet all the criteria, you get into the like top tier heaven. That's the celestial kingdom. And it's like, you literally have to be without sin to get in. And it's like,
wow.
And it's like, but no one can be. And so they're like, well, that's where Jesus took your sins for you. You know, you're thinking like, I have to be perfect.
Yes.
At like 12 years old, you're thinking about, oh my God, where am I going to spend eternity? And it's a lot for a kid.
Well, right. And even within like Christianity, it's very interesting. When I was Christian, I used to debate the Mormons that were coming to the door and stuff and evangelizing to my family, that they place a heavy emphasis on works where they'll be like, yes, Jesus saved you, but you still need to do these and these things to get to this level or this level or that level. And it's like, fundamentally, that doesn't make any sense. Like, if Jesus was the lamb who died for your sins and wiped them all away clean, it's not like he left this weird hierarchy.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Just want to be very clear. Like, from a biblical point, like, a lot of Christians have a huge problem with Mormonism for many of the reasons this included.
Oh, yeah.
That they place this heavy emphasis. And then there's such interesting I'm like I don't want to like speak poorly about religions, right? Like I never want to talk poorly about people's belief systems that are very important to them, but it's also very concerning to me when there is levels of like structural, mental abuse that occurs.
Yes.
Kind of when there are people who are higher up in the church claiming to have a closer authority to God.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, telling people that they've been called to these positions or that positions, which really has a huge effect on directing their life and their whole experience. And so like that's a level of control and manipulation that
it's intense manipulation.
Yeah.
And I consider what I went through very emotionally and spiritually abusive. Really questioning my self-worth as a human.
Yeah.
I think it has a lot to do with why my self-esteem was so low growing up. I really see a strong connection there. And I think that's common.
I would say that's very normal. Because if you take the Bible literally to what it's saying you are sinful.
Yeah.
That's why you need Jesus.
Right.
Because you are so flawed that God would have turned his way away from you. The Old Testament God would have turned away from you, and that's why you need Jesus.
Yeah.
So yeah. It's a very interesting, complex situation here, right? Like they're inherently denying your worth to put you into the situation where you constantly need something else. And that's going to affect you because then every day you're trying to be a better Christian. But being a better Christian means doing all these things, plus watching your thoughts because your thoughts are just as dangerous as your actions, which is super problematic, right? So then if you even think about pornography or you think about lusting, you've already sinned. Oh no. Talk about thought patrol. Yeah. It's very clear how anxiety could be linked to that. Now you're asking every single thought, is this sin? Is this okay? Is God okay with me? That sounds like anxiety. Like every single thought, like, oh my God, what's going to happen if this thought is that? And now you see yourself in hell. Yeah.
And this was, as a young kid sitting in sacrament meeting, like repenting in my head and thinking, but then not knowing, well, am I forgiven?
Exactly.
Am I forgiven or am I not forgiven?
Yes.
This is what was occupying my thoughts as like a 15-year-old.
Yes.
Instead of just being able to focus on school, my future, my friends, who I am.
And Tamagotchis.
Right.
Yeah.
Kid stuff.
Yeah.
I think that was one thing I resented, was wanting to just be a kid. And looking at my friends and even just, God, the restrictions. It was intense. The swimsuits, the modesty stuff.
Can you say more?
Yeah, no two-piece swimsuits.
Oh, wow.
No, like, tube tops or short shorts or, nothing provocative. No tattoos. Only one piercing in the lobe of each ear.
Oh, wow.
For girls.
Wow.
Boys couldn't have piercings at all. No alcohol, no coffee, no tea. You can just rattle off. No premarital sex. Like, rattle it all off. Mm-hmm. So many things that you can't do. Just no. And I just remember looking at other families and being like, can't we just be normal?
Yeah.
Like other families whose parents get up and just like make some coffee and like, why is that bad?
Right. Yeah, especially because probably media, things like coffee, you were probably seeing on a normal day-to-day basis.
And I loved the smell.
Yeah, and it's like a very American culture piece.
Yeah. So, and just, it was weird to want normal things like that, but I longed for normalcy. I didn't want to be weird. And sometimes it was embarrassing when people in public and people at school, like kids at school, would ask you about being Mormon and make fun of you. And then you feel guilty for not defending the church because you're supposed to, no matter what people are saying, but it's embarrassing and it's hard to be a kid. Yeah. And you want to fit in. And so then you've got the guilt cycle continues. Because now you're denying
the Lord.
Right.
Which is like the unforgivable sin.
Yeah. Just infusion into every aspect of your life and thoughts.
Wow.
So it was exhausting. And I think it's cruel that it does this to people because we can't be the only ones.
No, we're not. Oh, without a doubt, we're not. No, not at all. I think that's why it's so fascinating to me that there's not a lot of research on this. I don't know if it's just like people like me have not come into the space to start doing it, or what's going on, or people don't want to try and dismantle this or like look at this, but like the fact there's not enough looking at this in the psychological literature is just fascinating to me. Yeah. Not that I want to study it because I think it's so heavy.
It's a lot.
It's a lot of trauma work like that.
It's a silent, lonely struggle to be someone in an intense religion. Feeling trapped in it but afraid to leave. It really is an abusive relationship.
Yeah.
Just the repercussions that this can have on people's lives.
Yeah. It's fascinating because in this moment I'm thinking of the person who's like hearing this going like, these bitches. Like it's just a religion. Like why? Like do they not have worse things to suffer through? And it's like, I guess to those people, Yeah, there are worse things in the world, but this doesn't mean that this wasn't hugely difficult to go through for a lot of people.
Yeah.
You know? And I want to say this is huge. This is huge. This is your experience of your life. There is nothing bigger than that.
This was the center
yes.
of your life because you're taught that your religion is who you are.
Right.
So when you take that away, then it's like, well, who am I?
Exactly.
Who am I? What
right.
did it?
Right.
That, like, weird.
No, and I think that a lot of people who have been in religion where it was something that was casual, that's very different, right? Like, there is a level of some people who truly internalize these religious beliefs to define every aspect of why they are on this planet and every word and every breath and every moment.
Yeah.
And to those people, to let go of that ideological structure is traumatizing.
Mm-hmm.
Your whole, it's like a bomb dropped on your concept of self and purpose.
Yes. That is what's hard to explain, like, to people who are like, oh yeah, I'm Christian. We go to church on, like, Christmas and Easter. In that context, I see religion as more of a facet in your life.
A piece, yeah.
It's more of a tradition, less the driving force behind every day.
Exactly.
So that is what you're having to overcome when you leave it.
Yes. And from the beginning of your childhood, you're raised to know that if you mess up, you will spend eternity in hell. Mm-hmm. And they tell you eternity in hell is the gnashing of the teeth. Mm-hmm. It is
weeping and wailing.
Exactly.
Just eternal torment.
As a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
They're scaring children with a literal horror movie.
Exactly. Okay, and if you don't want to do that, you have to believe Jesus. Good luck.
Yeah.
Oh, and believing Jesus means monitoring your thoughts.
Yes.
Monitoring your biological desires, including sexuality and things like masturbation.
Yes.
All these other things. Because if you don't, you won't get to Jesus. And remember, you're going to burn in hell.
Yeah.
That's huge. Like, just that whole structure. If we could take, like, a step back from Christianity and look at that from an outsider perspective.
If you described someone doing this to a child and just left out the detail that it's a religion.
Yeah.
They would say it's abuse.
Yeah, like, okay.
Until you say, oh, it's a church doing it.
Exactly. There's a dragon.
Right.
If you don't believe in the dragon, it is going to burn you for the rest of your life. Crispy, crispy, crispy. Yeah, right? But, like, that's the thing. And if you heard that and you met someone who was like, oh, yeah, we're telling our child that they don't believe in the dragon, that they will die forever, you would look at them and say, wow, that doesn't sound healthy.
Yeah.
That level of pressure, that level of internalization of all that sort of stuff. And it's just like, obviously, because religion has been a piece of our human existence for many years, even though it's declining at massively rapid rates.
Yes.
But for a long time, that has been a huge piece. So yeah, it makes sense that we would just find this to be normal. But is it truly when you take a step back?
When you actually look at the behaviors.
Exactly.
And what the stringent guidelines you put on people's lives. And the control over people's lives. It's like, it's none of your business how a person lives if they're not hurting anyone.
Right. I want to ask you, and I think it's unfair because I only know about this because of personal context, so if it doesn't feel like it's appropriate to share, but the concept of confession.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I'm thinking about that story.
I will absolutely. That is something I think that happens in, well, I'll back up. Yeah. So I was, I think, 15, and I was going in for a temple recommend interview, which basically is just saying you're worthy to go into the temple. Because, that's a whole thing.
Worthy to go in the church, you have to have.
So, not just a regular church. There's Mormon churches that you go to every Sunday. Then there's the temple. There are less of them because they're more like regional. Like, you'd go to the nearest one to you. But you can't even go through the doors if you're not worthy. So you have to have, gone to interview with the bishop, and he'll talk to you about things, and you'll repent for things if you've done anything wrong. And then when he deems you worthy, you'll be able to go into the temple and do whatever it is the activity is. So, we would go do things for youth group. And if it was going to be at the temple, I had to have the interview with the bishop.
Wow.
Well, I was 15 years old and hormones were raging, and I had a boyfriend at the time and fooled around with him and then felt super guilty because I thought, oh my gosh, like making out with a boy, like, fooling around sexually. Oh my God, I've sinned. I've done something horrible. The guilt was eating me alive. So when it comes time for my interview with the bishop, I was like, well, I have to tell the truth because you can't go.
Fat cat, little bell. I'm sorry.
It's cute. You can't go into the temple if you've sinned. Like, that is a sin. So not only have you sinned, but then you went into the temple when you're unworthy. So now it's
you're doubling
sin.
Down. Yeah,
lots of sin.
Whew, anxiety. I'm sure through the roof. Now you're just wondering.
Oh, I'm sweating.
Yeah.
So first off, the interview with the bishop involves me being in a room with him with the door closed, just me and him. This like 60-something, 50-something-year-old man. And so I confess basically that, I've like done things with my boyfriend sexually. Yeah. And he starts going into, well, what like sexual acts did you do? Where did he touch you? Was it over your shirt or under your shirt? Was it over your pants or under? Was there penetration? Was it with his finger or his penis? This is what this grown man was asking me, a teenage girl, in this room. Like, explicit sexual questions. Yeah. And I just remember never being so ashamed or humiliated or dirty feeling in my life. Ugh. And it was many years later that I looked back at this and thought, that was crossing a major line.
Oh my God, yes.
Could you imagine, again, in any other context, imagine this is a teacher, like closing your kid in a room with the door closed and asking them explicit questions about what they do with their boyfriend. Right. So, and I just think other children in the Mormon Church are are being subjected to this.
Yes.
That's very damaging. And I still, to this day, when I remember that, it makes me internally just cringe. It just feels disgusting.
Yes, I would agree.
And it felt very invasive.
Like they were probing to get the details of the story so that they could imagine whatever.
I don't even know. Yeah.
Don't even want to think about it.
Because it's like, why was it necessary for you to know all of those details in order to be able to tell me if God was going to forgive me?
Right. Because God either forgives you or he doesn't, right?
Yeah. And plus God, by your own belief, he knows all those details already. So why do you need to know them?
Exactly. That's why I get frustrated, like, theologically. I'm like, how does this make sense?
At all. What are you gaining from these details that you're asking of a child?
Yeah. Power structure, control, shame, internal, all those things. Yes.
And then for months, I cried after that for months because I thought, I don't know if I'm forgiven or not. Am I forgiven yet? When will I know if I'm forgiven?
Yeah.
And when I look back now and realize none of that pain was necessary, that's the kind of thing that really would make me angry. And that's why I struggled with that anger for so long.
And how do you feel now?
I've actually allowed myself to be angry. I allowed myself to feel it and to feel rage and to let myself cry. This was done to me. I didn't deserve this and I didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah.
Exploring who you are, whether that's sexually or otherwise, is your right.
Yes.
And like as a teen, those are formative years and it's okay to feel desire.
Masturbation is healthy.
And I know we keep talking about masturbation, but it's healthy.
I just am so frustrated that some religion would claim to have authority over your biological needs.
Yes. Well, not only authority over them, but to teach you that they are wrong.
Yes, exactly.
That having feelings that literally you do not control is a result of your imperfection.
Right.
So if you think you are inherently wrong as a being, how does that not impact every other aspect of your life?
It does.
I think that's why I would get so mad. And I would get mad because I know that other people out there are dealing with the same thing from these kinds of organizations.
Were you like depressed at that time?
I started having problems with depression, I would say, in middle school. And it really peaked in my 20s. I was dealing with depression at the time.
I say that because I'm thinking of my own experience. I remember telling my therapist that, this is dark, But I just, like, didn't think that I was going to live. I thought that in my 30s I would kill myself and, like, put my head in an oven and just die.
Sylvia Plath style.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know how that was the thing, but that was the thing for me where it's just like, yep, I'm going to have kids and I'm literally going to hate my life and I'm just going to die at some point. That's going to be normal. And then saying that to my therapist and like just kind of being baffled at the time of being like, I don't know why I was like this. I don't know why I was like this. And she was like, you were in a structure that wasn't in accordance with your values. So it makes sense that you wouldn't want to live that life. And I was like, oh shit, that makes a lot of sense because I don't feel like I want to die at 30. I'm excited to explore all the aspects of me and my life. But at the time, I just felt so restricted that I was like, this is just going to be what it is. Yeah. I'm just going to have to accept that. And like with any ideological structure, to just be like, oh, I'm going to have to accept this. I'm going to have to accept that this is the reality. It's like, no. Please stop. Yeah. Please rethink. And please reimagine and recognize our ability to define meaning and value in this world.
Oh my gosh, yes.
No, I know. And I feel like that's why this religion story and people who leave the religion, I think, are so powerful because they've gone through that experience of redefining their meaning.
I can look now and see how much happier I am.
Oh my God, yeah.
Being on the other side of this and how I feel like now life is full of just so many exciting possibilities.
And colors and just life.
It felt like my family became more authentic with each other when we left the church. It really just felt like, you know those Claritin commercials where it's like all foggy
and then they
Claritin clear. Like,
yes.
Yeah, it's leaving that.
I would agree.
Leaving the church, I felt like, oh my God, I can breathe.
Yeah.
I can relax and just be okay with myself. Damn.
Exactly. And we say that
felt good.
Now being here.
Yeah.
Not at the first days of walking away where we were probably like me crying, saying, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what this is. And all those, moments of having to ask ourselves, that was not a fun journey. And it even still comes up, in like these small random moments where you think you've like fully let go of it. And you're like, oh, why am I still doing this? You're like, damn, that might be a remnant. And even that, like having to ask yourself, like constantly, like, is this me or is this the ideological thinking? Even that's its own fun anxiety piece game. And I think that's why when my sister was here, I was like, it's like, what do you... So interesting because like the patriarchal concepts of like, oh, you shouldn't patriarchally want to save someone, but then equally like hearing everything that you say, hearing everything that is that structure, and then having someone that you love in that, and you're just like, how could I not want to preach to them? But if they're happy there, but at the same time, are they?
Right. Are you really happy, or do you just feel like you don't have another option?
Yes.
I've had people tell me, that I need to tone it down, or that I'm being really angry, or that I should, and I'm not here to bash people's beliefs.
Exactly, right.
If it genuinely makes you happy and brings joy to your life, then I support you making that choice. But my concern is for people who were like me, who feel trapped in it, but don't feel open to be able to say that they feel trapped in it.
Right.
And it just makes me sad that these churches are continuing to perpetuate very damaging cycles.
Yes.
In real people's lives.
And I think it comes fully back to what you said earlier of to admit that you're unhappy in this religion or any religion kind of takes this level of like people think it's their fault. That if I'm unhappy, it's because I'm not a good enough believer. It's because I have so much sin. It's because this and that.
I'm not doing it right.
Exactly. And so that's the struggle, right? Where someone's like, no, I'm unhappy. I don't like this. But then they push it back to them and be like, it's because of me. And then that can just keep going and going. You get better. You feel the high. You feel connected. And then you feel back low. And that's what mine frequently felt like.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I'd go to the, retreat.
Yeah.
And leave just feeling this sense of, yes, like I've been fulfilled. I can do this. I've got this. And then daily life settles back in and you're like, oh, I'm just not good enough. And,
exactly.
And it just continues. And they just over and over. And you just convince yourself, all I have to do is work harder. If I work harder, I will achieve this happiness. And so you just continue to push yourself to unbelievable levels.
Knowing having two people that have been in it, to have not been conscious of it ourselves, to becoming conscious of it. And once you see the truth, you can't unsee the truth. And it gets very hard to imagine how we could have ever existed in that headspace before.
Oh, yeah. It makes me tired looking back at it. And it's interesting how capitalistic it is. If you just work harder, you'll be happier.
Jesus. Right. Jesus, save us now. What's a piece of advice you wish you could have gave to yourself?
That you really are okay as you are. This isn't the only way to be. I think just like really if I had internalized that I had a choice, which I eventually did.
Yes, yeah.
But ideally, I would like for other people to not have to grow up in that, you know, have to go so many years struggling to find that.
And if you're the person hearing this for the first time, feeling these thoughts, to have compassion for yourself, that this is going to be a huge change of re-understanding your context to religion. It's a really tough journey that does not just change overnight. And maybe that is a switch of religion. Maybe it's from one to another that fits you better. And even that is difficult. So just like having the compassion for yourself that even though it's not a capital T trauma, like a lot of society likes to say, I would say this is a huge capital T trauma.
I really think it's the equivalent of spending years in an abusive relationship.
Yeah, your whole worldview. And I think that's why I'm so passionate to have these conversations, because it's like, yes, this needs to have a space, because yes, this is traumatic.
Yeah.
This is a huge 180 of how you see yourself, the world, everything.
Yeah. I really think that there's a level of PTSD for a lot of people involved. You know, I still to this day, if I even get invited to any kind of church function, I feel this pit in my stomach. Like I can't go near it. Walking through church doors stresses me out. I mean, it's
super normal. The literature talks about that.
I like break out in a sweat.
Yeah.
Even physical responses.
I remember when I first started pulling away and like walking away from religion, I felt like my religious friends would always look at me and say like, are you happy? Like, are you sure? Like, are you really happy? Because, you know, there's always this narrative that if you leave the church, you're filling your void for Jesus with a million other things.
Right.
And it's like, if I could just say one thing, I am so much happier than I ever was in a fundamentalist religion.
I didn't know I could be this confident.
Yeah.
Or that I could be this at peace with myself. I really didn't. If my old self, I feel like my old self would look at my current self with a mix of terror and awe.
And jealousy.
And jealousy. But like also,
I mean, we're witches compared to our old self.
Yeah, it's like I'm a vastly different person than I pictured myself being when I was like 16.
Certainly.
I'd like to think my 16-year-old self would look at me currently and think like, wow, she's cool.
She escaped.
She got out. Wow. But yeah, I'm really proud of having come through it.
Yes.
I feel like even now, I almost have this little sense of, oh God, like who's going to listen to this? What are they going to think? Are they going to hate me for like spreading shit about probably? But these were lived experiences.
Yes.
So I just kind of remind myself, these are truths that are hard to say and not palatable to hear, but that need to be spoken.
Yes. And I love your grounding in that moment, right? Like here comes another thought in your head of like, are these people going to judge me for what I'm saying? And to redirect and be like, no. This is my lived experience. This is my truth. And this is my trauma.
Yeah.
That's powerful.
Feels, you know, pretty good.
Yeah, I know. It's like, it's super delightful, all this trauma that we went to. But like on the, I mean, like not toxic positivity, right? But like on the other side, I'm sure it made you who you are today.
I think so. And there's just a level of peace. I can't say that all bad things came of it. I think as a person, I'm a lot more introspective, you know, because when you're a kid thinking that deeply about your actions and your thoughts, You know, I think you really become very observant. You become very introspective.
I mean, I don't think it's a coincidence that many people on this podcast were raised religious.
That's not a bad point.
No, I do think
You're not wrong.
Yeah, I do think that Christianity is preparing people for anarchy. Like, just like, oh wait, I have to throw out all these beliefs? I'll throw out all of them. Like, what do I know now? Exactly, that's what I'm saying.
Right.
I really think it's like prepping people
Right.
to just be like, I'm a liberated person after this.
Yeah. And I'm, you know, kind of defensive of
As you
that
should be.
now, because
As
I've
you should
worked
be.
so hard to get to this place.
Exactly.
And I'm protective of not wanting to lose myself again.
Yes.
So that's another kind of big topic of conversation with my therapist a lot of the time.
I love it. It's never,
Yep.
the healing work is never over.
Never done.
And I'm always like, ooh, what's the pretty bow to the end of this conversation? It's like, there doesn't have to be a pretty bow at all. Like, literally what you said, I'm confident that so many people who have gone through the same experience will just hear your words and feel them.
I certainly hope so.
And that alone
Yeah.
is normalizing and bringing into a community of people who maybe have thought about these thoughts, but been for a multitude of whatever reasons, not able to express them.
Right.
Yeah. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I do have to ask you the one question that I ask everyone on this podcast. What is one thing that you wish other people knew was more normal?
Not having all the answers. Like, it's okay for there to be mystery. I think because having grown up with the background I did, religion claims to have all of the eternal answers. And leaving that, and then facing a world with more mystery, where there wasn't just an answer laid out for me, was very scary. But also, I think there's a lot of beauty in that. And just embracing that you don't know, but we're going to go on this journey anyway, and we're going to find out. That is something that I've really embraced throughout this process.
Letting go.
Mm-hmm. Letting
Wow.
go of control.
Which makes sense too, especially within a religious framework. You had to control everything down to your thoughts, your dress, your actions, to then reach the space of letting go.
It's very freeing.
And scary all at the same time, let's be really honest, right? Like, we have, like, I do have some levels of jealousy for the people that are in religious structures that tell them, oh, God is directing this.
Yeah.
God is the person who's making sure that your whole life is going to be according to his plan, and he has good and prosperous plans for you, quote, 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 something.
Mm-hmm. Everything's going to be fine.
Exactly. Wow, what a beautiful thing to fall back on and know, like, oh yeah, that sucked today, but God's got a plan. Yeah, so embracing the opposite of, oh, maybe some other religious structure, but for the most part, this is a chaotic, unknown, every single moment. Literally, the future is inherently unknown. I can't promise that, you know, either of us, this is dark, but I always I can't promise that I'm going to live to tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I think even Christians and some people would resonate with that, but like, there is no one controlling this.
Yeah.
And like letting go of that level of control is difficult. And so I want to know, what is the beauty that you see in that?
It allows you to enjoy every moment more.
Mm.
And it allows you to really feel what you're feeling.
Yeah.
And experience your life. Because if you think, well, this doesn't matter because the life after this is the one that really matters, then you might not be taking the time to really experience things, to really feel the moment.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a very YOLO kind of feeling, but I really think that it makes you cherish this life more.
Certainly, right. Because you're living for this life, not for the next, which is, most religions proudly proclaim that they're living for the next life, not of this world.
Yeah.
Remember all the sticker bumpers? I don't know. Those were frequently around in my community of like, we're not of this world. We're of like the heavenly world. So we don't do these things.
Yeah.
And even in that, when you're letting go of the control, right, and all the answers, like I feel like it's a very beautiful moment to feel the grandeur of the existence. Kind of like, you know, those moments when you walk up to a mountain and you feel how small you are and really recognize that you have no control.
Yeah.
And, you know, when we look at ourselves as little tiny dots on this blue dot inside a really big, 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 big galaxy that we don't know the end of, that we don't have the answers to, and seeing the beauty in that, I think it really puts you into the right kind of perspective of like, I think it allows you to let go of a lot of these like difficult things that we might be holding on to, of like resentment, you know, anger, these pieces, and like learning to accept it and be like, this is what is, and I'm going to move forward from here. Yeah, now I feel like I'm rambling.
got very existential.
I know. I'm like, over here, let me just put in the philosophy that nothing matters. We're on a blue dot. Don't forget. Could die tomorrow. Celebrate today. Break. But yeah, no, I think a lot of people will resonate with so much of what you said today. So it was really beautiful to have you on.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
It was really fun.
Yeah, thank you. If you enjoyed today's conversation, then subscribe for new episodes released every Wednesday, and follow us on Instagram at Modern Anarchy Podcast, where we open up a dialogue about all of these topics. Otherwise, I'll see you next week. And a special thanks to one of my favorite artists, Smith, for the intro and outro song to this